everybody doing today? Oh, come on now, you're in church. How's everybody doing today? Yeah, come on now. It is great to be able to be with you guys today, be able to hang out. And man, I think church should be the funnest place to be all week long. And so put a big smile on your face, lean on in. Let's have a good time for the next few minutes. And a little bit about me, as Pastor Vinny shared. And by the way, I'm sure you agree with me in Pastor Vinny and his beautiful bride. You have amazing pastors. Would you give them a hand? Thank them for... They are incredible leaders, and it is just awesome to be able to be with you guys. So a little bit about me. I am the founding pastor of South Hills Church. We have 12 sites. We just opened up one in Virginia just recently, but I'm based out of Southern California. I know, God help us. That's where gas is like $400 an ounce. And so, yeah, I live in Southern California. As he shared, I do a thing called Church Boom. We have about 30 coaches, and we coach anywhere from 200 to 300 churches a week. We rescue churches that are dying. We go in, we help them, and bring them back to life. And we've been doing that for about 2 years now. We're rescuing about 200 to 300 per week because America is losing about 10,000 a year shut down in churches. And so we're working on that. I do something called Feed One, where I work with Convoy of Hope, and I'm going to talk about that at the end of the message, but I want to minister to you first. Most importantly, I have been married for 31 years. Yes, oh no, to a beautiful Hispanic woman. Oh no, she's hot. And she doesn't speak any English, but that helps us get along. And you can't really argue about anything if you can't talk to each other. And we have 2 amazing children. And then we have this third one. No, I'm playing. We have 2 amazing children. And about 2 years ago, our daughter gave us our very first grandchild. And how many are grandparents here? Isn't it the greatest thing on the planet? It is so much better than parenting. And it is God's gift to you for you not killing your own kid. It's an amazing thing. And I was holding my granddaughter recently, and she's so cute. And I was holding her recently, and my adult son says to me, "Dad, it's like you love her more." I said, "No, it's not like I do. I do." Let me be very clear. You now come in second. You had a good run. It's over for you. Hey, if you have a Bible, why don't you go to Luke chapter 10? We'll be there in just a second. If you don't have a Bible, next time at a hotel, get one. They're free. I steal them all the time, and I sell them on eBay. It's a little side hustle. But hey, America makes a lot of money on superheroes. Would you agree with me? DC Comics, Marvel, you've probably seen some of the movies. If you had to choose, and you might think I could care less about this, but if you had to choose, you were forced to choose. If you had to choose between Superman and Batman, who would you choose? How many say Superman? Real quick, come on, Al. Okay, how many say Batman? Look at you dark people. And okay, if you had to choose Iron Man or Spider-Man, how would you say Iron Man? You had to choose. Spider-Man, let me see. Okay, if you had to choose Captain America or Wonder Woman, you had to choose Captain America, Wonder Woman. Okay, I saw some of the guys' hands go up and went right back down. Your wife's next to you, buddy. Be careful. We love heroes, and we make a lot of money by producing heroes in America. And you know what? I believe with all my heart that God has wired each of us to be a hero. He's desired for you not only to be a hero, but he expects you to be a hero. He's desired you that way. He wants you that way. Matter of fact, when my son, he was just about four, I remember when he was born, and I love baseball. I've been to all 30 stadiums. I love baseball. And my son was born, and and he's like 3 years old, 4 years old, and I'm trying to teach him how to throw in the front yard. I'll never forget, and he's throwing with his right arm like this, kind of like that, and I'm like, God, he's got to throw better than that. This isn't good. Help me, Jesus. And he's throwing with his right arm, and he's going like this and going like this. I'm like, come on, son, you can do it. And it just looked horrible. Well, one day, he's about 4 years old. I threw the ball over his head by accident, a little plastic ball. He ran over and grabbed it. Before I could say anything, he grabbed it with his left arm. And if you know anything about baseball, being a lefty is a big deal. He picked up a left, and I yelled out, no, your other arm, son. And he fired it at me with his left hand. And oh, man, I was like, he's left-handed. And I could hear the angels sing. It's an amazing time. And I was like, God's on the move. And I'll never forget. So he just started playing baseball all the way through school and high school and college. And I remember when he was headed to college, I had a little tattoo put on his arm for 401k, my personal retirement program. No, I'm just kidding. But I'll never forget, he's about 7 years old. And he was playing baseball, pitching all the time. And I'll never forget, I was walking by the bathroom, and I heard him in there talking. And I'm thinking, who's he talking to? And the door was slightly open, and I looked through, and I could see him as I looked through. He didn't know I was watching. I looked through the crack in the door, and he's standing in the mirror. And he's going like this. It's the bottom of the ninth. He's doing the whole thing. Oh, and my little buddy, he goes, here comes the pitch. Here he swings. He hits it. It's a home run. And for the next year, I would peek into the bathroom, and I'd hear him talking, and every time he's standing in the mirror. But you know what I noticed? Never once did he not hit the home run in the mirror. It wasn't like, here comes a pitch. He swings. He's a loser. Never. He's always the winner. Why? Because God wired us to be the winner. And God wired you to be the winner. And God wired us to be the hero. He wired us that way. One day in Luke 10, there's this really cool story. There's this group of religious people. Let's say there's about 30 of them. It's a small crowd. And then there's Jesus standing over here. These people are Jewish. Jesus is Jewish. One of them stands up, a religious law expert, meaning he knows the law. He knows the Old Testament, not the civil law. He knows the law of the Bible. He stands up and has a conversation with Jesus. And in this incredible conversation, we find, one, what Jesus wants us to do to be a hero, and two, how much he expects us to be a hero. And we find it in Luke chapter 10, verse 25. One day, an expert in religious law stood up to test Jesus by asking him this question, "Teacher, what should I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus replied, "What does the law of Moses say? How do you read it?" Now, I love that Jesus doesn't answer the question. If you'll notice in the Bible, Jesus always answers the question with a question. So the guy says, how do you go to heaven? How do you get eternal life? Jesus on this side says, well, what do you think it says? You're the expert. You tell me. And in this next verse, you might have read it before. If you've been around church for a while, you've read this Good Samaritan story. But I bet most of us have never seen this next verse in this way. Look at the verse, verse 27. The man answered, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, and all your mind." Help me out now. And love your what? Love your as your. Okay, now, why is this so important, and why is the love your neighbor as yourself bolded out? Let me help you understand something. Okay, so Jesus says, well, you know the law. How do you think you get to heaven? The religious law expert says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. Now, you got to understand something. The only reason he added love your neighbor as yourself is because a few weeks before, Jesus was asked a similar question and added it to it. See, understand something. The love your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, that's found in Deuteronomy. In Leviticus, you find love your neighbor as yourself. It's in the Old Testament. The religious law experts, whenever they would be asked the question, how do you go to heaven? All they would say is, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. They left off, love your neighbor as yourself. Because, wouldn't you agree with me? It's a lot easier to love God than it is to love your neighbor. Come on. So they would just say, just love God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. They left off, love your neighbors as yourself. The only reason this guy added it is because Jesus did it a few weeks before. They were leaving off part of the verse, saying, we're only going to read this part of the Bible, but not this part, because this part's easy and this part's not so easy. How many agree with me that we probably do the same thing sometimes? Come on now. How many love God's forgiveness and mercy? How many love it when he wants you to give it to someone you don't like? Not so easy, is it? You know those people in your life that they bring more joy when they exit the room than when they enter? Come on, the holidays are coming up. You're going to see them. And okay, that's what was happening here. We love the part of the Bible that says, and God opens up the windows of heaven and pours out a blessing on your life that you cannot contain. Oh, we love that. But the part before that says, now bring the whole tithe in the storehouse, not so much that part. We like one part, but not another part. We're all guilty of that. I remember a while back, I was late for a speaking engagement, and I hate being late. I love being on time. And so I was late for a speaking engagement. Long story short, I'm going down the freeway doing a nice Christian 95, and I'm late for this speaking engagement. And you know what's funny? I'm late for it, and I know I'm speeding. And the whole time I'm going, God, just let me get there. Just let me get there. I know I'm speeding. Lord, don't let me get caught. How many of you have ever done that before? You run a yellow light and say, Lord, help me. As I break the law, Lord, be with me. And so I'm flying down the freeway, and doing 95, and all of a sudden, here comes the red and blue light. Woo! And I'm like, are you kidding me? And now it's going to cost me more money, and it's going to cost me even be more late, And so I see the red and blue light, so what do? I floor it. No, you might have saw it on the news. No, I floored it. No, they pulls me over. Okay, now he comes walking up. I can see him getting out of his car. He's walking up, and sitting next to me is a Bible. And I'm going to totally confess with you, totally be honest with you. And by the way, don't you love it when a pastor says, can I be honest with you? Because I'm always thinking, what have you been doing up to this point? But so I look over, and I know this is bad. I know you're all going to be like, wow, dude, I can't believe you. He's walking up, and I take my Bible, and I put it on the dashboard. How bad is that? Because I'm thinking, what if he's one of us? Maybe he'll look at the Bible and let me off the hook, So I put the Bible up there, and he comes pulling up, license and registrations, please. And he looks in there, he's talking to me like this. And the whole time he's talking to me, he's looking at the dashboard and he's seeing my Bible. And I'm thinking, I got him. This is it. He's one of us. Hallelujah. The whole thing. He gets done, and he's eyeing the Bible. He gets that, I'll be back in a second. He walks over. And he starts writing a ticket. I'm like, are you kidding me? He's writing me a ticket? I thought he was, And he goes walking back up. Here's your license, sign here, do all this stuff. And he's walking away. I'll never forget. And I said, okay. He goes, have a good day, drive safe. And he's going like this. And he leans back and he looks at my window. He goes, by the way, and he points at the Bible. By the way, he goes, read Romans 13:1. Now, I know the Bible well, but I don't know every verse memorized. I don't. He takes off. I open it up. Obey the laws of the land. Yeah, you laugh. $275 later. You know what he's really telling me? He was like, hey, buddy, you're following part of the Bible, but you might want to follow all of the Bible. You want to follow every bit of it. And so this is what he was saying to me. Now, that's what this was happening in the story. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus added that. That was new to them, okay? Now look what the response is. Right, Jesus told them. The guy said, love the Lord your God, heart, soul, strength, and mind, love your neighbor as yourself. Look at the next verse, verse 28. Right, Jesus told them, do this and you will live. It's almost like the conversation's over. Yeah, you got it. Love the Lord your God, all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, love your neighbor as yourself. Right, you got it. It's almost like Jesus is walking away and wait. The guy's like, hold on, Jesus, hold on, look at. The man wanted to justify his actions. So he asked Jesus, and who's my neighbor? Isn't that interesting? So interesting to me. He's like, wait. Before you take off, Jesus, okay, so in order to go to heaven, I got to love God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. So in his mind, he's going, I got that part down. But this neighbor thing, who's my neighbor? Who really is? Here's what he's really asking. Hey, Jesus, what's the lowest amount of neighborly love I have to give? I mean, like, what's the bare minimum I got to do here? And in order to be okay with you, And so this is such an interesting thing. Now, if you were a Jewish person living 2,000 years ago, which none of us are, a Jewish person living 2,000 years ago, you would understand that they lived in tribes. So if you lived here, your mom and dad were across the street, grandma and grandpa behind you, your brother's over there, your cousin's on the other side. You lived together in a tribe. Like, it was like you owned that culture. It was that was your block. So here's what he was really thinking. Hey, Jesus, who's my neighbor? Because if you're talking about the 3 or 4 houses around me, we're good. If you're talking about going farther out than that, we're not so good. That's why he said he wanted to justify his actions. And then look what Jesus says. So it says, who's my neighbor? Now look what Jesus says. Verse 30. Jesus replied with a story. I love that he says, who's my neighbor? Jesus still doesn't give an answer and just says, okay, now let me tell you a story. I think it's hilarious. A Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, up and left him half dead beside the road. By chance, a priest came along, but when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. A temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there, but he also passed by on the other side. Then a what? Samaritan. A despised Samaritan. Then a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. So here's the story. The guy says, okay, Jesus, if I want to go to heaven, which all of us want to go, because we don't want to go anywhere else, who's my neighbor? And then Jesus on the other side tells the story. Well, now follow me on the story. Stay with me. This guy gets beat up. He's laying there half dead. Now watch this. Hold on. He tells the crowd, one of your priests, one of your Jewish leaders walks by and does nothing. They're like, oh, you gotta see, we read it and it's no big deal. You gotta understand, 2,000 years ago, you're a Jewish person, you're like, wait a minute, what do you mean the Jewish priest walked by and did nothing? This was big. Oh, and then the temple assistant walked by. The associate pastor, he did nothing. But then a despised. Why the word despised? Because Jews hated Samaritans. They were the scum of the earth. And he's like, then a despised Samaritans, the ones you hate. Imagine Jesus telling the crowd, the one you hate. He walked by and felt compassion. Now, again, we're not Jewish people living 2,000 years ago, but if we were, here's how it would look. Wait a minute. You said the priest didn't do anything. That's our guy. You said the temple assistant didn't do anything. That's our guy. This despised Samaritan, they're like, are you about to make him the hero in the story? It looks like you're setting him up to make the hero. This can't be right, Jesus. Okay, now let's step out of the story and let's find lesson number one in this. And I think lesson number one is this. If you're taking notes or writing it down, it's this. Take notice of what's in front of you. You got to take notice of what's in front of you. Okay, here's what he's saying. The priest and the assistant goes by, they do nothing. Actually, one translation says this. They saw him. The Samaritan noticed him. It was different. It's like, no. He noticed him. Take notice of what's in front of you. What has God put in front of you? The neighbor, the coworker, the situation, the hurting person. Take notice of what's in front of you. I'll never forget years ago when I was speaking regularly at one of our campuses. I don't speak regularly at the campuses anymore, or at this one specific one. It's our largest one. It has 5 services, and it's very large auditoriums, thousands of people. And I remember a few years ago, I'm getting ready to speak one of our 5 weekend services. Service is about to start. It's like 5 minutes to 10, and I'm sitting right here. And in walks this guy. He sits right over here on the other side, the big long row, and he sits on this side. And in walks this guy. Now, I don't know how to say it except for just to say it. How many have ever met anybody that just flat out, they may be the nicest person in the world, but they flat out look intimidating? You know what I'm talking about? Like, that's the kind of person that when you're pumping gas late at night and they come pulling up, you're like, yeah, $1.50 is enough, because, you're scared to death of them. So he is just a mean-looking dude. He's the nicest man, but mean-looking. I don't know how to describe this guy except for to say he's not like he's the Godfather, but he looks like he's the guy that guards the Godfather. So I come walking in, I'm sitting right there, and he comes walking in, and I'm going to tell you, he is tatted up to here. He's 6'2". He's got chains all like this. His hair's slicked back. He's got sunglasses on that he never takes off. And when I mean never, I mean never. Not for worship, not for prayer. I baptize him with sunglasses on. Name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. He came up, he just, literally. So I go walking over to say hello to him. He does, again, just imagine mobster, good-looking guy. I go, hey, man, how you doing? He stands up. He's 6'2". He's just a beast of a man, about 50 years old. And he goes, how you doing? He talks like this. I'm not even kidding. I'm like, there's a cannoli somewhere. And I'm like, how you doing? And he goes, how you doing? He goes, my name's Glenn. I go, hey, Glenn, how you doing? I'm crazy. He goes, nice to meet you. And I said, nice to meet you. And I go and sit back down, and I'm thinking, man, he is an intimidating man, So service goes on, blah, blah, blah. I get up to speak. I'm speaking. I'm doing this funny story. There's a bunch of people there, lots of people there. Everybody's laughing. I look over at Glenn. He's just sitting there like this. Not one smile. Everybody's laughing except for Glenn. He's just sitting there. I'm thinking, he's going to kill me. That's why he's come here today, to kill me. And so he's just sitting there, doing nothing. Service, I get done speaking, I go back over, sit down. We do the offering all traditional with the buckets and all that. So I'm sitting I'm over there, and the associate pastor gets up. I'm done with my message. He's praying for the offering. I don't close my eyes. I'm over here with this gentleman sitting. I got my eyes open the entire time because I got to watch Glenn. In case he makes a move, I got to be ready. And I look down over at Glenn, and during the prayer, while the associate pastor's up there praying, my eyes are wide open. I look down over at Glenn. He starts rolling up his pant leg. And I'm like, he's going for a gun. He's going to kill me. He undoes, Pastor Vinny, the largest grip of $100 bills I've ever seen in my life. He had to be 10 grand on his ankle. He undoes a rubber band, and he starts counting them out for the offering. I'm right here. He's over there. And he's like, and he gets done. I look over. I'm like, I know where the bodies are. Come on, buddy, give. And he's sitting, I'm looking over at him, So anyway, he gives in the offering, whatever. He keeps coming. He keeps coming to church 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 Sundays, 5 Sundays, 6 Sundays. I'll never forget, he comes up to me about, 6, 8 weeks, been going to the church. He comes up, Pastor Chris, right before the service starts, he goes, I would like to volunteer. I go, well, where do you want to volunteer? He goes, I'd like to help out with security. And I'm thinking, I don't think so. That doesn't sound like a good idea, Hey, you're late, bah! I don't know if he'd be good, So we made him an usher, And if you want your offerings to go through the roof, have Glenn take the offering. People give when Glenn is standing. He stands over you like an usher, like that. People taking their watches off, their credit cards, putting their kids in the bucket. They're scared to death, And but that's Glenn. I'll never forget. And then he'd been coming to the church for about 3 months. I'll never forget, he comes up to me, Pastor Chris, right before service. He goes, you know why I sit in the front row every week? I said, no, I have no idea why we sit in the front row every week. He goes, if someone tries something on you, I'll take care of it. And I'm thinking in my mind, he wants someone to try something on me. He's getting itchy. He hasn't been able to inflict pain in almost 3 months. This went on, and he kept coming to the church, and man, God did some awesome things in this guy's life, and he'd become a friend, and he's still a great friend today. I love Glenn, funniest guy you'll ever meet, and still intimidating. I still don't know if he even has eyes. But he's one of the most intimidating men I'll ever meet. But here's the thing. In a busy situation, we got all these campuses and all that. I just remember God saying, I put Glenn in front of you. Now take notice of it. You take notice of what's in front of you. You know why? Because here's the thing. You know what the word revelation means? It means when God opens your eyes to something you've never seen before. Here's 3 words I want you to remember if you don't remember anything else today. Revelation requires responsibility. Say that out loud with me. Everybody in the house, come on. Revelation requires responsibility. When God opens your eyes to a need, it requires a responsibility. That's the point of the Good Samaritan. The Samaritan walks by and his eyes are opened up. Revelation requires responsibility. That was the whole thing Jesus was trying to get across. Now, let's go back to the scripture, verse 34. Going over to him, Jesus continues with the story. The Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged him. The Samaritan's starting to do some stuff. Then he put the man on his own donkey. Hold on. If you put a man on your own donkey, what happened? How do you travel? You walk. The Samaritan walked. He took him to an inn where he took care of him. The next day, the mere fact that says the next day means that the man spent the night with the guy. He's going the extra mile. And he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins telling him, take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm here. This is an amazing story. So the priest walks by, nothing. The temple assistant walks by, nothing. But the Samaritan walks by and he does something about it. And here's the second lesson I want you to write down. Do what you can with what you have. Take notice of what's in front of you. Help me out. Do what you, come on, do what you, with what you do what you can with what you have. Revelation requires responsibility. You do what you can with what you have. That was the whole point of what, see, here's the thing. Maybe the guy didn't need oil, wine, and bandages. Maybe the guy needed medicine, but the Samaritan did what he could with what he had. Maybe the guy didn't need a donkey, he needed a horse, because that's a lot faster, and if you're injured, you want to get where you got to go quicker, but you do what you can with what you have. Okay, maybe the guy didn't need an inn and just spend the night in some hotel. Maybe the guy needed a hospital, but you do what you can, hold on, with what you, that's revelation requires responsibility. That's the whole point Jesus is trying to make. He's making a hero out of the Samaritan. How is the Samaritan becoming the hero? Because he's doing what he can with what he has, because he's taking notice of what's in front of him, because he realizes this, that revelation requires responsibility. You do what you can with what you have. Now, let's go back to the story. Look what it says. Now, which of these three would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by bandits? That's a pretty easy question. So which one do you think is the neighbor? Which one do you think God favored the most? Which one do you think God was cheering on the most in this story? Jesus asked the man. Now this is interesting. I bet you never saw this before. The man replied, the one who showed him mercy. Isn't it interesting? He couldn't even say the word Samaritan. Isn't it interesting? Couldn't even say it. He hated the guy so much. He hated him so much he couldn't even say it. Then Jesus said, yes, now you go and do the same. Here's the whole thing. The Samaritan was the hero because he came to the rescue. The Samaritan was the hero because he came to the rescue. You know, when we started South Hills Church years ago, we started it off, and God did some awesome stuff. This is when DVD was on its way in, and video was on its way out. Anybody remember video? And we created a 4-minute video about our church. That's how we started our church on March 29th, 1998. We started out by creating a 4-minute video about our church. Do you know how hard it is to create a 4-minute video about a church that doesn't exist? You got people on there crying, it's changed my life. I'm like, you liar, we haven't had a service yet. And we make this 4-minute video. Long story short, we send it out. Okay, the idea is we're going to send it to 10,000 homes, and then we're going to have our grand opening on March 29th. But there was an accident at the label machine place. They call it, I forgot what they call it, but it's a place where you go and they label it like resident or current resident, you know, the mail house, and the machine got stuck. So the week of our launch, my wife and I are opening up a church. Our kids are 3 and 2 years old. We're going to launch this church. 10,000 videos are going to go out. We send them to the mail house. The label machine got stuck. On Tuesday morning, when all the 10,000 videos arrived, here's what happened. Instead of 10,000 videos going on out to 10,000 homes by accident, because the label machine got stuck and no one caught it, 7,000 videos went to the same house. Can you imagine coming home? She came home and they were on pallets. You'd think the post office would be like, maybe this is a mistake. Nope, they delivered them anyway. She called me up and she was cussing me out. The lady was. They're like 4 or 5 syllable customers. I was writing them down. I was like, that's a good one. I've never heard that before. She was letting me have it. Here's the worst thing, Pastor Vinny. She didn't even show up to church. I'm like, lady, we got a lot of money invested in you. You can at least show up once. And we got all that straightened out, and God did awesome things, and the church grew, and we launched. But you know, in the early days, the thing that I found to be the most amazing in the early days, people always ask you, what are you most proud about the church? I said, in the early days, people just took notice of what was in front of them at our church, and they did what they could with what they had. I remember these 3 high school kids. They were 15 years old. I'll never forget. They saw a documentary. Now watch this, 3 15-year-olds saw a documentary on TV about kids that didn't have shoes, and so they took their shoes off to bring awareness to other kids that don't have shoes, and for 1 month they walked around church, school, and everywhere else with no shoes. At first I thought, oh, that's cute. Within a month, CBS, NBC, ABC, and Fox News all got a hold of it. They started doing stories about these kids inside of 30 days. When it was all said and done, Nike, Puma, Adidas sent them over 15,000 shoes and the money to send them to a third world country because 3 15-year-old kids saw a need and decided to do something about it. That's revelation requires responsibility. That's doing what you can with what you have. You know what's cool is? These 3 15-year-old kids, they didn't sign up at church for it. They didn't hit the QR code. They just did what they could with what they had. You know what else I was proud about in those early days? I'll never forget this young couple. They lived in an apartment. They would work swing shift. They'd come home at 7 in the morning. They'd come home at 7 in the morning, sleep till about 2. When they wake up, all the kids started coming home from school in the apartment place, and they noticed the kids were coming home to no parents. Mom and dad worked, or single mom, single dad, or whatever. So they went around and said, hey, parents, would you mind if we did a little Bible study in the little grass area at our apartment place? And if we did a Bible study and gave out some candy and had a little game for the kids, would you be okay with that? They did it, and 4 kids show up, then 10, then 12. Next thing you know, more and more kids were showing up. Then they started taking these kids on Sunday. This young couple was bringing 40 children to church every Sunday morning, and their parents. That couple was responsible for 80 people coming to our church. They didn't sign up at church. They didn't do a QR code. They weren't begged by the pastor to join the ministry. They just did what they could with what they had. And they took notice of what was in front of them. Last one is Rick and Cassidy. I'll never forget them. They had a neighbor across the street, a lady that had a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and the dad walked out on them a couple weeks before. Rick is working in the garage, looks over there and sees the mom holding the 2-year-old, watching the 4-year-old on her little bike, trying to learn how to do her bike, and washing the car at the same time. And the guy in the garage, Rick, looks over and says, man, something's got to be done. He went in there and got his wife, Cassidy. They walked across the street, met the neighbor, introduced themselves. They'd only ever met once, grabbed the sponge out of her hand, and they finished the car for her. Then he went back to his garage, started up the lawnmower, went back across the street, mowed the front yard and the backyard. This went on for 5 years every single Saturday. Why? Because they did what they could with what they had. That's what it means to be a hero, folks. That's what it means to be a hero. You do what you can with what you have. You take notice of what's in front of you, because when God gives you revelation, which means your eyes open up, something for the first time, revelation requires responsibility. First, I want to challenge you to do that in your own life. I want to challenge you to do that in the city. I want you to challenge you to do that with your neighbor. I want you to challenge you to do that with your coworker. Do what you can with what you have. Take notice of what's in front of you, because God has wired you to be a hero. And the Samaritan was the hero, not because he wore a cape, but because he did what he could with what he had. And he made a difference.